Mama, how could you sacrifice yourself for our sake? So you mean we are living on your blood? Ejike cried. Welcome to African Tales by Chinwa, a home of unique African tales. If poverty had a face, it would be carved into the weary expressions of Nneka's children. If suffering had a song, it would echo in their footsteps each dawn as they dragged their bare feet through the dusty paths of Umokwe village. Ejike and Chizom were just 10 and 8, yet they bore the burdens of men. Every morning, before the sun could wipe sleep from the eyes of the world, they were already awake, half asleep, half starving. Their uniforms, threadbare and patched at the knees, flapped in the Armatan breeze like old flags from a forgotten war. They attended one of the poorest schools in the village, the type with no fence, no floor, and barely any chalk on the cracked blackboard. But they went faithfully because education, no matter how broken, was their only flicker of light in a world that had long gone dark. After school, there was no rest, no lunch waiting, no time to be children. They dropped their torn books and picked up the trays, baskets, and basins. They hawked anything hawkable: ground nuts, mangoes, boiled maize, sachet water, fried akara, charcoal, bitter leaf, even scraps, anything that would sell. Some days they sold well, most days they didn't. But they walked and shouted, from dusty paths to busy corners, begging eyes to look their way, pleading voices to buy from them, not for profit, not for savings, but for dinner. Dinner wasn't even dinner. It was a handful of gari soaked in sorrow, sometimes shared with the same water they sold. They worked like elephants but ate like ants. A full meal was a luxury they hadn't tasted in years. Most evenings, they fell asleep not from tiredness alone, but from hunger, the kind that wraps around the bones and makes the belly hum a lullaby of emptiness. Their home was barely a house, a crumbling mud structure with a roof that leaked when it rained and walls that whispered cold secrets at night. Yet it was all they had. Their father, the only man they ever called hero, had died with a hand on his chest and fear in his eyes. Poverty had gripped his heart so tightly that it simply stopped beating one night, just like that. He died not in war or from illness, but from the slow, choking hand of poverty. Since then, life had been one long stretch of hardship. They didn't just suffer, they were mocked for it. Every day came with a fresh wound, not from hunger, but from the words people flung at them like stones. In school, their classmates called them Indiaro, the children of misery. They laughed at Chisom's torn dress and Ejike's sandals, stitched so many times they looked like patchwork puzzles. Teachers barely noticed them unless it was to shout, "You again?" when hunger made them slow to answer. In the village, it was worse. Market women hissed when they passed. "Here comes poverty's shadow," one would say, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Maybe their mother should just sell them too," another would mutter. The insults stuck to their skin like red-hot iron, but they kept walking, kept hawking, heads down, mouths shut, hearts burning. Some days, the shame was so thick it wrapped around their throats, but they had no choice. They had to move. If they stopped, they wouldn't eat, and if they didn't eat, tomorrow would never come. They learned not to cry in public. Crying was for the rich. The poor had to swallow their pain like bitter cola, hard, dry, and silent. Ejike's journey through secondary school was nothing short of a miracle stitched together with blood, sweat, and unanswered prayers. Each term was a mountain, and every exam felt like a war he had no weapons for. His notebooks were filled with more borrowed pages than his own, and his school shoes, God help them, had been glued and re-glued so many times they held together by faith alone. Yet, he endured. They walked long distances to school, sometimes on an empty stomach, other times with nothing but soaked gari as breakfast. But Ejike was determined. He read under dim lanterns, sometimes with the flickering light of a candle stub, sometimes with none at all. He shared his textbooks with Chizom, who was now in SS2, catching up quickly behind him like a shadow refusing to be left behind. They had grown stronger, taller, thinner, but wiser. Pain had aged them beyond their years, and their mother, Nneka, remained their rock. Her back bent with labor, her palms calloused from endless menial jobs, fetching firewood, cleaning compounds, farming other people's land. But her spirit never broke. She had once whispered to herself, when she thought they were asleep, At least one of my children must go to the university, even if it kills me. When Ejike finished secondary school, there was no celebration, no party, no photos, no special meal, just silence. And then the storm, the worry of what next? The university admission came like thunder. He had passed. His name was on the list. Second class, a chance, just a chance, to break the curse that held their family hostage. But with what money? Nneka cried that night. Not loud tears, but silent ones that rolled down her cheeks while she pounded cassava in the backyard under the moonlight. She had no husband to ask for help, no relatives who hadn't already turned their backs on her, just her 2 children. She began working twice as hard. She added night shifts to her daily hustle, selling food by the roadside and scrubbing floors by lantern light for women who barely acknowledged her existence. She saved every kobo, sacrificing food, rest, and even her own health. Ejike offered to forego the university and learn a trade instead. She shook her head slowly, her voice shaking. Number, you'll go. You must go. You'll be the one who lifts us from this mud. And so, the struggle continued, fiercer than ever. Ejike stayed home for a year, helping, saving, fighting to gather enough for registration. Chisom, now in SS2, hawked double shifts after school, never complaining. She knew what her brother's admission meant. It wasn't just his dream. It was their escape. Finally, Ejike got into the university, and from the very first semester, everything was a fight. School fees, accommodation, textbooks, feeding, even transportation. Nothing came easy. While other students worried about grades and lectures, Ejike worried about whether he'd be sent home for unpaid fees. Back in the village, Nneka worked like a woman possessed. Her hands never stopped moving. If she wasn't pounding yam in someone's kitchen, she was fetching water for the town chief's compound or clearing bushy lands for farmers who paid her with a bowl of rice instead of cash. Her bones ached. Her eyes stung from sleepless nights, but her heart burned with one desire, to see her son graduate. Chisom, still in secondary school herself, became more than just a younger sister. She was his second spine. Every evening after class, she hawked bread, sachet water, vegetables, anything people would buy. She walked long distances, sometimes with a tray on her head until her neck screamed in pain. Other times, she stayed out late, just to sell enough to send Ejike at least 500 naira for food. At 16, her life was already full of silent sacrifices. Nneka often cried when no one was looking. She would stand outside at night, staring at the moon with eyes swollen from tears. Not because she was weak, but because no mother was created to watch her children suffer this way. She wept for a son who spent nights in the university library not just to read, but because it was safer and quieter than his overcrowded lodge. She wept for her daughter, who had become a woman too soon, but neither Ejike nor Chisom complained. Their pain had become a quiet companion, one they had learned to walk with. Ejike studied like his life depended on it, because it did. He poured himself into his books, not just to make his mother proud, but to justify the cost of their suffering. 4 years later, he didn't just graduate. He did so with first-class honors. The day the news reached the village, Nneka collapsed in the middle of the compound, not from shock, but from joy too heavy for her tired body. Chisom dropped her tray in the sand and screamed with laughter. Neighbors came running, clapping, shouting, "Ejike Don, make us proud." Even the ones who once mocked them joined in the praise. It felt like a new dawn. Finally, their years of suffering were paying off. Nneka danced in the dust, barefoot, singing praises to God with a voice hoarse from too many years of silence. She said, "My son will wear a suit and sit in an office. No more hawking, no more tears." Ejike returned to the village with his certificate in one hand and the hopes of 3 lives in the other. Graduating with first class felt like winning a golden ticket, but reality tore it to shreds. Ejike applied for job after job, dressing in his only decent shirt and borrowed shoes. He queued under the sun, sat in waiting rooms that smelled of perfume and desperation, and smiled politely as interviewers promised to get back to him. Weeks turned into months. The only thing that ever came back was silence. Everywhere he went, they asked for connections. Who do you know? Who sent you? And when he said no one, they smiled with pity. A first class without a godfather was just paper. Back home, things got worse. Nneka sold the little she had left. Her wrapper, her cooking pots, even her late husband's old radio, just to keep them afloat. Chisom had to pause her schooling. Her uniform sat folded at the edge of their mat while she hawked full-time, eyes sunken, cheeks hollowed. Then came the night they almost lost her. She collapsed on the roadside, tray scattered, face pale. A kind stranger helped carry her home. Nneka fell to the floor when she saw her daughter's lifeless form. She shook her, screamed her name, held her tight like she could fight death with love alone. Chisom survived, but barely. That night, Nneka didn't sleep. She sat beside her daughter, staring at the flickering lantern flame. Her heart throbbed with guilt, with anger, with something else, something fierce. She looked at her children and swore to herself, I will change our story, even if it means doing the unthinkable. Something shifted in her that night, the kind of shift that happens when desperation meets destiny, the kind that makes a woman knock on doors no one dares approach. And so she decided to stop being a she-goat and become a lioness for her children. The next morning, she rushed off to her friend Mama Ejiro, who took her to a place far into the deep forest. Few weeks later, Ejike was sitting outside, lost in thought, when his phone rang. A strange number. He almost didn't answer, but something told him to pick. Hello? Am I speaking with Mr. Ejike Okoro? Yes, please. This is Mr. Iodel from Zenith Engineering. We've reviewed your proposal. The board is impressed. We'd like to offer you the contract. 28 million naira. Ejike stood frozen. His lips moved, but no words came out. It took him a full minute to find his voice. He had submitted that proposal nearly a year ago, his final shot, before giving up. And now it was real. He was going to be paid to manage a rural electrification project. Not only that, they wanted him to lead it. Meanwhile, in an entirely different corner of life, Chisom's path was also changing. She had gone to the local market to sell bread, just like she always did, when a voice called out her name. Chisom? Chisom Okoro? She turned to see Adaora, her childhood friend, now grown and dressed like someone from another world. Is this really you? Adaora hugged her tight, eyes wide in disbelief. You used to top every class. What are you doing hawking? They talked for hours, and when Adaora heard everything, she didn't laugh or pity her. She took action. She gave Chisom a new phone, a laptop, and enrolled her in an online design course. She even linked her up with an international business coach. Within weeks, Chisom began earning. She started designing logos, websites, and eventually built her own brand. Clients flooded in, local and international. Money started to come. Real money. Everything changed. Ejike signed the contract, received his first payment, and launched his company officially. Within a year, he had 3 more contracts. He bought a car, then another. He moved to the city, wore suits tailored to his size, and no longer stood outside company gates begging for interviews. Now he walked through the front doors as the boss. Chisom wasn't left behind. She launched her own design agency, young, bold, and brilliant. She hired staff and flew out of the country for her first business summit. They began living big: houses, cars, trips, fine clothes. Life became sweet. Ejike even met someone, Idais, a soft-spoken doctor with kind eyes. They fell in love quickly. Within months, they were married. When Ejike drove his SUV to the village to surprise their mother with keys to a new apartment, she smiled gently but shook her head. I'm fine, my son. He laughed. Fine where, Mama? I'm taking you out of this place. But she stepped back. I don't want anything, not even water from your hand. Keep your things. His smile faded. He thought it was a joke, maybe stubbornness. He tried again. He brought food, new clothes, money, begged her to follow him. She refused. Every time. Chisom came to, tears in her eyes. Mama, I've made it. Let me bless you like you blessed us. But Nneka wouldn't budge. Then things got stranger. People began whispering. We saw your mother at Encore Market, sitting on the ground, begging. Begging? Chisholm's voice trembled. My mother? They went looking, and they found her, sitting on the side of a busy street with a bowl in front of her wrapper dusty, hair unkempt. She was humming softly, like someone lost in another world. Some gave her money, others passed, like she was invisible. Chisholm ran to her, dropped to her knees. Mama, please, what is this? Come home. Please come home. But Nneka looked at her with calm, distant eyes. This is where I belong. They tried everything, talking, pleading, but their mother would not come with them, would not eat their food, would not step into their cars. At night, she slept under a makeshift shade built from old cartons and plastic bags. Her once vibrant spirit now quiet, too quiet. Ejike couldn't sleep. Why would she do this, after all we've been through? Chisholm's heart broke every day. She watched from her car one afternoon as their mother walked barefoot through the market, bowl in hand, muttering to herself. The woman who raised them with fire in her bones now looked like a ghost. But something was off, deeply off. She's hiding something, Chisholm whispered one night, her voice barely audible. Ejike nodded slowly, jaw clenched. And I think whatever it is, it started the moment we made it. And suddenly, their wealth no longer felt like a blessing, and people already started talking. Ejike and Chisholm could no longer watch the woman who had once held their world together crumble in silence on the street like a forgotten soul. Their hearts bled every time they passed the market and saw her sitting with that empty bowl, mumbling to herself, refusing to look them in the eye. It didn't make sense. They had money, they had houses, cars, comfort. They were everything she'd once prayed for. And now that they could finally give her rest, she called it death. Mama, talk to me, please. Chisholm had begged one night, kneeling beside her on the roadside. Just tell me what we did wrong. What are you running from? But Nneka only stared ahead, lips sealed, her breath shallow. Ejike tried too, his voice cracking with desperation. We are your children, your blood. How can you beg strangers for food when we are here? She turned her face away. It was like she had locked them out of a place only she understood. No matter how hard they knocked, she wouldn't open the door. Her silence was heavier than 1,000 words. So they did what they thought was best for her. They took her forcefully with trembling hands and tearful apologies. One early morning, Ejike arrived with Chisholm and 2 trusted friends. As she slept beneath her makeshift shelter, they carefully lifted her, wrapped her in a soft blanket, and carried her into the waiting SUV. She tried resisting, but they took her anyway. They took her to Ejike's house in the city, a spacious, quiet place with light pouring through the windows and the scent of lavender filling the rooms. It was a world far from the street she had made her home. They settled her into the guest room. Warm bed, clean sheets, soft curtains swaying in the breeze. Chisholm laid out new clothes, lace wrappers, a fine blouse, golden slippers, even perfume, everything a mother deserved. But she didn't touch any of it. She sat on the edge of the bed, arms folded, eyes distant. When Chisholm came to feed her, she flinched and whispered, "You want to kill me." Chisholm froze. What? Nneka's voice was calm, too calm. You want to finish what you started. Mama, it's us, Ejike sighed from the doorway. We brought you here because we love you. But Nneka retreated to the corner of the room, crouched like a child hiding from something no one else could see. That night, they had no choice. They locked her inside the room, not as punishment, but protection, and even turned on the air condition. The windows were barred, the door gently shut. There was food, water, but she didn't touch any of it. She just sat there, whispering to herself, as if waiting for something terrible to arrive. Ejike stood outside her door, fists clenched. What if she's cursed? He whispered. Chisholm shook her head, tears in her eyes. Or maybe we've opened something we shouldn't have. Neither of them understood what was happening, but deep down, they felt something was wrong. The next morning, everything changed. The sun rose, but nothing felt warm. Ejike was the first to notice it. His phone buzzed constantly, and each call carried worse news than the last. Sir, the contract with Zenith Engineering has been suspended indefinitely. What? Why? Sir, all your 12 containers have been drowned. Before he could process it, another call came. Mr. Ejike, we're sorry to inform you that your account has been temporarily frozen due to a legal complaint. Complaint? From who? But the line went dead. He sat on the edge of his expensive couch, chest pounding, staring at his phone like it had turned into a weapon. Next minute, his wife started screaming. She just had a miscarriage. Everything was so fast and all at once. Chisholm's morning wasn't any better. Her laptop refused to turn on. Her emails had been hacked. Clients began calling in waves, accusing her of fraud. One international brand threatened a lawsuit. Chisholm felt her throat tighten. But I didn't do anything wrong. Within hours, their lives began to fall apart like a sandcastle in a storm. They gathered in the living room, all looking pale, panicked, eyes darting around like hunted animals. Then it started. Screaming, blood-curdling, bone-deep screaming from upstairs. Me! Let me go! Let me go back to where I belong. It was their mother. She was not happy all that was happening because of her. Nneka banged on the door, fists slamming like thunder against wood. Her voice wasn't the voice they knew. It was deeper, wounded, wild. You've brought me here to die. Let me go back to the street. Chisholm stared at the ceiling, hands shaking. She's not okay. She's really not okay. Ejike stood frozen. His heart screamed to open the door, to comfort her, to help her. But his fear screamed louder. What if she was cursed? What if this unraveling was connected? Downstairs, Adaise, Ejike's wife, watched all this with growing terror. She had been patient, hopeful, even prayerful. But this was too much. She had barely spoken since the whole thing began, but her eyes had changed. The fear in them was no longer silent. It was loud, urgent, demanding. She walked slowly up the stairs, her hands trembling as she reached for the keys to the room. The lock turned with a click. The door creaked open. Without a word, Nneka rushed past her, down the stairs, past the stunned faces of her children, out the front door, barefoot, unkempt, wild. She ran. They shouted after her, but she didn't stop, didn't look back. She ran like she was escaping something. Chisholm slumped onto the floor, her voice a whisper. This isn't normal, Ejike. This is something else. Just a few hours after Nneka ran out of the house, the atmosphere became normal again. It was as if a thick, invisible veil had been lifted. Ejike's phone rang again, but this time, it wasn't bad news. It was Ikenna. Mr. Ejike, he said, his tone now warm. We just found the 12 containers all safe. Ejike blinked, stunned, just like that. Another call followed. Not long, the doctor who examined his wife came out and said the baby was intact. Clients who had withdrawn began calling Chisholm back, apologizing, claiming it had all been a mistake or a system error. Some even sent bonuses to compensate for the trouble. Her emails returned, her website came back online, and by evening, she had closed 3 new deals. Peace returned, but it was still a misery. That night, neither Ejike nor Chisholm slept. They paced, whispered, questioned everything. Adaise stayed quiet, watching her husband from a distance, her heart heavy with the weight of what they had all just witnessed. Far away in the heart of the village, Nneka sat in the small kitchen of her friend, Mama Ejiro. Her face was drawn, her hands shaking slightly. They're asking questions, Nneka said. They want me to live in comfort, to eat their food, wear their clothes. I can't. The price was clear. I must be dirty for them to be clean. I must beg so they can own. Silence fell between them. Then Mama Ejiro sighed. Then maybe it's time they knew. They are not children anymore. My own children knows all I did for them and they are cool with it. Nneka sat quietly for a moment. Then she nodded. I will try, but I just hope they understand. That evening, Just as the sun began to slip behind the rooftops, Ejike and Chisom heard a knock on the compound gate. It wasn't loud, but it echoed deep inside their hearts. Ejike opened it. Their mother stood outside, barefoot, dusty, her wrapper faded and loose. She didn't step inside. Instead, she raised her voice calmly and said, "Call your sister and wife. I need to speak to all of you. Outside, not inside." Confused, Chisom came out. Adais followed. "Mama, you want to come in?" Chisom asked softly. Nneka shook her head. "Number, I must remain where I belong." A seat was brought out for her. She refused it. "I will sit on the ground." And she did, cross-legged on the bare concrete like a villager under a tree. Everyone stood around her, unsure of what to expect. Then she began. "I have something to tell you, all of you. I have kept this inside for too long, but the time has come for truth." She looked directly at Ejike, then Chisom, then Adais. "You see the life you're living today, the cars, the houses, the money. I gave it to you, not just by prayer, by sacrifice." They blinked, confused. "I went to a place no mother should go. I met a woman, a spirit. She offered me a way out of our suffering. She told me my children would never suffer again if I was willing to take the suffering for them." Her voice cracked. She said, "You will be dirty, so they can be clean. You will be a beggar, so they can be honored. You must never eat from their hands. You must never sleep under their roof. You will walk the earth like dust, and in return, they will rise like stars." Chisom's mouth dropped open. "Mama, what are you saying?" Nneka's eyes glistened with tears, but her face stayed strong. "I accepted it. I did it. I sacrificed myself for you. I thought I could handle it. I thought I could carry the shame, and I did, until you brought me into that house." Her eyes turned to Ejike now. "You see, all that happened in this house yesterday was all because of the little comfort you forced on me. That was why she took everything from you. But the moment I went back to the streets, everything returned." Nneka added. Ejike staggered back, eyes wide. "Mama, no. No." Chisom's hands flew to her mouth. "This isn't real. This can't be true." Nneka stood now, brushing the dust from her wrapper. "I was never meant to live like a queen. That was your right, not mine. I chose this path, and I must stay in it until death." Tears rolled down Ejike's cheeks. "But Mama, you should not have done this. You should have told us." Nneka looked at him with a sad smile. "Would you have let me go if I did?" "I had to become a lioness for my children. I hated seeing you children suffer, and I had to do what a mother would do." Then, without another word, she turned. She ran, down the street, into the night, her silhouette swallowed by the fading light. None of them could move. None of them could speak. Tears flowed. Questions hung heavy in the air, but they had to save their beloved mother. This story teaches that true love, especially from a parent, can involve unimaginable sacrifice, sometimes choosing pain, shame, and even a life of suffering so their children can rise. It reminds us not to judge those who suffer quietly, because behind their pain may lie the foundation of our own success. It also shows that blessings may come at hidden costs, and forcing comfort on someone who has paid a spiritual price for your success can have consequences. Communication is vital. Secrets kept out of love can still cause harm. In the end, the story reminds us that real wealth is not in what we have, but in the silent sacrifices made by those who loved us enough to give up everything. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel for more powerful African stories that inspire, teach, and leave you thinking. Turn on your notifications so you never miss a tale that could change your perspective forever.